All right, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You ready to kick this off, Imam?
Yeah, so should I look at you or just look straight?
No, you could look at me because it's the angle is coming at you from the side. So
Okay.
whichever way is fine. You can.
All right.
Yeah.
Tight.
How's your Jummah going?
Alhamdulillah, Jumu'ah is going well by the grace of Allah.
Alhamdulillah. When I came in, by the way, they told me talk to Amir Muhammad Turai, and I was like, oh, Amir, mashallah. I haven't heard that title for a masjid coordinator before.
He's
So-
the Amir.
So when I pulled up, I said, "Where's your Amir?" And they knew what I was talking about.
Everyone knows the Amir.
Yeah, and he said, "Oh yeah, he's inside. Just go up to him." So I thought that would throw him off, but it didn't. The parking brother, you know. But alhamdulillah, how's it going with you? How's your
Alhamdulillah, Allah is Rahim and Kareem and everything in between.
alhamdulillah? I actually wanted to go deep into your life and everything that you've done, mashallah, over the course of your life. But that's going to require like a 3-hour podcast, and you didn't give me that much time, but that's okay. We can see what we can run through in an hour, and then inshallah maybe I'll have another invite.
Inshallah, inshallah.
I appreciate it.
Barakallah feek.
Jazakallah khair. So Sheikh, I just want to start with asking why you're in New Haven, because last I checked you were running Zaytuna Institute with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. So what
Yeah.
brought you here?
You know, I'm still involved there, but, you know, I'm 65. That's retirement
Mhm.
age. So, you know, I've scaled back. But I go out once a semester to California. All of my
Nice.
family's here. So we have, you know, young kids, young athletes that help train and, you know, orient. Because my whole entire adult life, I've been pretty much away from my family. And this is the last shot. You know, we got these little youngsters. And so after them, that's it. So
I got you.
spend a little time with family.
Okay.
And, also, you're just trying to do some writing and put myself in position to do some writing. So,
I hear you.
yeah.
Mashallah. Okay, so that's actually kind of related to the topic I wanted to discuss with you today, and that's the responsibilities of the American Muslim. And so what I wanted to ask you about, and you can probably fill up the rest of the time just answering this question, but I wanted to ask you what you envision are the responsibilities and goals of the American Muslim, and then also by extension the American Muslim community. And we can start just with postgrad, because you can't really affect any change as a kid, and then you're busy with high school, and then you got college, and then you graduate, and then you're saddled with debt, so you have to pay off the debt. And then once you pay off the debt, you got to get married. Then you get married, and you have the responsibilities of the man to his wife, and the wife to her husband. But what's beyond that? You know what I mean?
Well, I like to reframe it. First of all, a child can make a tremendous difference
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, our children are scattered, dispersed throughout neighborhoods and communities. And you make friends, you never know where those friends are going to end up. And so if they remember you as a Muslim, oh yeah, my Muslim friend, he would always stop to pray. You know, his mom would call him in, it's prayer time. And, you know, you can leave an indelible imprint on someone's life as a child. So I would say, like, even encouraging our children, number one, to have friends within reasonable limits, because there are a lot of negative influences that the average person who's not a Muslim might bring into a Muslim child's life, but with proper supervision and surveillance, to be involved in our communities. And children, like I said, you never know. I know kids that I grew up with now. One of my friends, we all grew up in public housing, but one is he's a PhD in nuclear medicine working in Japan. You know, another was working at NIH. He died early, unfortunately. You know, one is superintendent of schools here in New Haven.
Mashallah.
So, you know, and so I can make phone calls if I need things from the school system, if I need to talk to someone or reference someone who's high up in really the medical profession, etc. There are people you can talk to, and these are childhood friends. These are people I haven't seen in 20 to 40 years, but you know, we know each other, and you never know.
I hear
And
you.
also, I think this whole, in terms of what I see for the American Muslim, I think the trajectory you mentioned is not only wrong, but it's undermining our youth and destroying a lot of lives. And that is, you go to college, you're settled with debt, you work, pay off your debt, then get married. So now you're getting married, you're 30 years old. And so you've gone through the peak years in terms of your sexual virility with no lawful way to express it. And so people express it unlawfully. And
Right.
the girls, when you do get married, you marry a non-Muslim, someone from back in your home country, or now I hear even Muslim guys marrying Hindu girls and all this kind of stuff. And so now a lot of girls are old. They're pushing 30, and now they're too old for marriage, and you have a whole almost generation of girls who aren't married. So I think it should be like, you finish high school and you do a year or two of college, you get married, your parents help you out, and you build a life, and then you continue whatever you're going to do. And I know many people are doing that, and they're quite successful. And they've been spared a lot of the fitna, the tribulation, and being in a position to make bad decisions concerning their life. So I would question that trajectory that you laid out.
Yeah, for sure. No, I actually didn't intend for marriage to happen what I was thinking in terms of paying off debt is that it would take a few years. Obviously, if someone has a ton of debt, it won't be a few years. So that totally makes sense. You don't want to put it off till 30. That would suck. But so just stepping past that, you graduated.
Okay.
Let's say you're married.
Okay.
Right. You have kids.
Yeah.
And so you want to find out your responsibilities towards your wife and your children. You need to put a roof over your head. You need to take care of them, clothe them, feed them, all that good stuff. But what's beyond that?
I think what's before that is you make a commitment to Allah, His Messenger, and His religion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that way, while you're balancing things, your number one priority is making sure that your family are strong, practicing Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And if that requires paying off the debt a little more slowly, it requires that, because I'm not I'm not getting this job that's going to put me on salary, but going to demand all of my time. And when I come home, I'm too exhausted to give any time, quality time, to my wife or my children. I'm too exhausted and just don't have the time to be involved in helping to raise my children. I don't have time to be a meaningful role model for my sons if you're a guy.
Yeah.
Because you're always at work, and so you're making money. They don't realize you're doing all this to put a roof over their head. All they know, you're not there.
Yeah.
And as a result, they really don't see you as their number one role model. So I think the most important thing is to commit to the religion and then build our lives around that, as opposed to committing to a career and then building our lives around that career. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying abandon career aspirations, but build the career around the religious life. And if that means making less money, if that means paying off the debt accumulated in college, med school, graduate school, whatever the case might be, then so be it. Because we're going to be we're answerable to how we for our children.
Okay, so what I hear you saying, I think, is that your number one commitment as a Muslim is towards your family. Is that right?
Your number one commitment is to Allah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Stuff Allah, of course.
In a meaningful way. No, it's legitimate what you're saying, and because for a lot of people that could be nominal. Oh yeah, I'm committed to Allah first and foremost, but that commitment doesn't translate into making life decisions that prioritize the commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm committed to Allah first and foremost, I'm going to try to marry a righteous woman if I'm a guy. I'm trying to marry a righteous guy if I'm a girl. And because in my commitment to Allah, I understand if I get this beautiful trophy wife that I could show off, but she's not committed to the deen, that's going to, number one, it's going to erode my deen over time.
Right.
And it's not going to be the optimal situation for my children. تنكح المرأة لأربعة يعني لجمالها ولمالها وجمالها حسبها ودينها فاظفر بذات الدين تربت يداك. So a woman's married for 4 things: for her wealth, for her beauty, for her status, for her deen. Take the one with deen. May your hand be covered with dust. And usually the one with deen, she's beautiful anyway. So
I got you. Exactly. So okay, so obviously number one is.
And so what I'm saying, like, that informs everything. So say I'm committed to Allah, but I'm gonna pass up this good, pious, religious sister. So in beauty, she's not in my top 5. She's number 7. But she's, la ba'sa biha, yani she's all right. But no, I'm going to ignore her, even though she's a very pious woman. And I'm going for number 1 on my beauty list. I'm going for number 1 on my status list. I'm going for number 1 on my money list. Yeah, she's loaded, She's been working a few years. She had a startup. She sold her startup. She's only 25 and she's a millionaire. So, I could take it easy. I could just put it on cruise control with her.
That's not a bad deal to me.
Yeah, but she has no deen. And so that's a bad deal.
That's okay. We can fix deen. We can work on it.
Al-maru, you can, but you might not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's possible. They say min al-mumkinat. It's possible, but it might not happen. And now what happens? Al-maru ala deen khalilihi. A person is on the deen of their companion. Your wife is your closest companion. Fanzur man takhalil. Yani, consider well the company you keep. So over time, she's that's not a bad deal, but she's chiseling on your deen.
Right.
What's wrong with watching this program? I know it's a little nudity, but we don't do it every day. She's chiseling away. What's wrong with going to the Christmas party? These are the people, they helped me. They were my partners, and they helped build the startup. And now we're doing this new thing. She's chiseling away.
Yeah.
And chiseling away and not strengthening you and helping you to be strong when every other thing out there is chiseling away at your deen. But she's your bedrock. So she's the one that patches up those little chips. She brings in and puts some super glue on it and puts it back on. So that's all I'm saying. Like, not a nominal commitment to Allah, but a commitment to Allah that translates into making decisions that reflect that this is a true commitment to Allah. Because those decisions I make consider that this is pleasing to Allah, and this is something that's going to help me in my deen, even if it might apparently lessen my dunya.
Got it. Okay, so you have a job. You found a righteous wife. What happens next?
Inshallah, Allah will bless you with children. And then you make a commitment to those children. And again, that's a decision. That commitment might mean, I have this job, and let me see if they're willing to transfer me to somewhere where there's a strong, viable Muslim community. I have this job. I have this pious wife. And I'm here in the middle of nowhere. And there's 2 Muslim families in town. And I'm thinking 4, 5, 6 years from now, who are my children going to have for their friends and be able to play with? What kind of Islamic reinforcement are they going to get from their peers and from their chums and their buddies? And so, again, you have the job, you have the wife. And now, if you get children, after 3 or 4 years, you're established on the job. Now they're at that age where, sociability becomes very important. Like, how many kids are in depression during the virus these last 2 years and counting because their social connection, school went online, and they didn't have that contact. You don't send them to their little T-ball, baseball league anymore because you're worried about the virus, and now they're at home depressed, and the older ones are suicidal. And so companionship is very important for children. We're social animals. And so now when I'm faced, now children are 3 or 4, 5 years old, have to start school. There's no Muslim school or even public schools with significant numbers of Muslims in them. There are no Muslims in town. So now I have to make a decision. Am I going to migrate for the sake of Allah and my family and my children, or I'm going to stay here and keep making money and just take a crapshoot with my children? I guarantee you there are a lot of parents who said, I'm going to stay here, I'm going to keep making money, and they regret it now. The girls are coming home. They sent them off to college with a green hijab. They came back with no hijab and green hair and say they want to marry their girlfriend. And this is happening every day in our community. And the parents are filled with remorse and deep sadness, but they made decisions that pointed toward that particular outcome.
Right. Jazakallah khair. Okay, so they have a righteous wife and a job. They should move to a community that is going to build.
If they're not situated in
right, for sure. So they go to a Muslim community. Their kids are in a Muslim school or a public school with a lot of Muslims. Basically, they're in good hands. What happens next?
What happens next is they work to help to strengthen that community. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a complaint we hear that now that a lot of millennials are entering their prime earning years, they're not spending like their parents did. Their parents built all these masajid, these schools, Islamic centers, and now I take that baton from my parents or my grandparents, and I pick that baton and I run with it. I start spending significant percentage of my income on these Muslim institutions. I start looking to elevate these institutions so that now we're beyond, okay, we have the elementary schools. Now I start working to help create endowments for these schools. I help to strengthen our nation colleges that are emerging. And so
when you say college, are you saying a Muslim college?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think every religious, the Catholics have thousands of colleges and universities in this country, starting with Notre Dame and the Loyolas, Loyola Chicago, Loyola Marymount, close to L.A., Loyola New Orleans, and Saint this, that, and the other.
So, but when
Saint
you say
Benedictine
college,
in Chicago, it's a majority Muslim student body.
Right. Are you referring to graduate and undergraduate?
You definitely start with undergraduate.
Okay.
And then you move up. Zaytuna College, we have an undergraduate program. Now we have a master's program. Inshallah, we'll have a PhD program.
MashaAllah.
So the point is, I didn't mean to plug Zaytuna College, but it was an opportunity to
go
plug
ahead.
Zaytuna College. But the point is, we shouldn't have 1 or 2 colleges. They shouldn't be underfunded. We should have colleges like the Buddhists have 3 or 4 universities. They have Naropa University. You know, we're larger than the Seventh Day Adventists. The Seventh Day Adventists have in Southern California, what's that? Major Loma Linda University. It has a medical school and a dental school.
Oh wow! My
dentist, Dr. Muhammad, graduated from that dental college, and so as a community that's mature, has been here long enough to be mature, we have to now begin investing in establishing higher level universities, quality think tanks. Like a lot of the issues that some I touched on, we should have really developed position papers that are well thought out by qualified professionals in various fields of endeavor to address those issues. Like we, as opposed to individual efforts, like someone like Imam Zaid, who recently wrote a very deep analysis and an assessment on the relation between the Muslims and the whole LGBTQI plus movement. Extremely insightful. He shouldn't be just a lone author. He should have the power of a think tank where that's all he does. I don't know. Maybe he's working 9 to 5
Yeah.
in IT or something, and then he's doing his research and writing in the evening. He should be working 9 to 5 at that think tank
Right.
with the support of the community to address burning issues. So we need think tanks, we need colleges, we need universities, we need quality elementary schools, we need sporting programs. How many Muslim schools even have a sporting program? And we have talented Muslim athletes who, and that's something that could not only give them a sense of normalcy. Oh, I could be a Muslim basketball player. That's normal. As opposed to these things are Islamic over here and these things are normal over there.
Mm.
And so how many of our schools have sporting programs? And so the athlete and the parents see some athletic prowess and they see the potential for a D1 scholarship to a good school that they're not going to have to pay for it. So they put the child in public school because they have sporting programs. And so all of these things require a communal-wide commitment. And those in the community, like most of the elders and uncles now, they're retired. They're past their prime earning. So they're not going to be the heavy lifters in terms of financing a lot of these things. It's going to fall on the younger generation who are moving into their prime earning. So as you said, they paid the debt off now.
Mm.
So now they're 35, paid off all the college debt, even med school debt. And now they're moving into, not only they're free of those debts, they also have moving into their prime earning years. So now I make a commitment to step up and take on some of that financial heavy lifting that the uncles I talk about and criticize were doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's what they do next.
Got it. So what would the goal of a Muslim higher education institution be? Because it almost seems kind of isolationist to have a Muslim this, Muslim that. Like, why can't I just go to a normal dental school or medical school? Why do I need a Muslim one?
Well, I didn't talk about medical schools and dental school. I mentioned Loma Linda, but number one, I think COVID exposed the tremendous inequities and ethical crisis that exist in our healthcare system.
Mm.
So a Muslim one that's built, functioning, operating on Muslim principles can be a model for others.
Mm.
But without that model, we're stuck with the status quo. We're stuck with not enough ICU beds because the profit loss calculus we're working with dictates that the maximum number of beds is too small for the potential maximum number of patients. Because if those beds are empty when there's no COVID, then we're losing money on them. And so we're going to keep the number small so they're always occupied when it's not COVID with other things.
And this is opposed to what would a Muslim do in that case?
I would say just moving beyond that. The first question is how, when you go to a hospital, is how you're going to pay.
Mm.
Okay. A lot of people become sick because practices such as aromatherapy. So you go and you're smelling bleach from the floors being bleached and this, that, and the other, as opposed, there's no consideration of natural light and the role natural light plays in healing. So we know its importance in vitamin D, and we know vitamin D is one of the best things and effective things to strengthen our immune system in the course of this pandemic. And so our Muslim hospital, we would consider the effect of aroma. We consider the effect of color. We'll consider the effect of musical scales, the maqamat. And so we're not just having intercom. We have music that has been developed by our Muslim doctors to heal patients. And we consider the role of light. And so there's natural light that's being brought into our hospital. We consider the role of proper bedside manners and what that means for a patient's well-being. And so we consider that healthcare and not profit is the number one consideration. I have a friend who was had her career almost ruined by the Cleveland Clinic because she refused to maintain the surgical schedule they set up for her because she was a robotic surgeon, and they set this incredible, impossible schedule up to minimize to hasten paying off the robot so everything could be pure profit. And she refused because she said, this is going to jeopardize my patient's well-being. I'm not going to stick to this schedule. And so they tried to destroy her career.
Wow.
And
well,
this
what
stuff
did they
is
do
happening.
exactly? When they told her she couldn't work anymore?
No, that would have been, that if they fired her, it would have been ideal because she could have gotten another job. They kept her on salary, didn't schedule any surgeries. She went for a year without working and lost her license.
Wow.
And she had to go to work a year overseas to regain her license.
Wow.
And so these are the kind of moral and ethical situations that we find going on. And I think we can create model institutions that can be serve as alternatives for our society.
So I think what I hear you saying is that we need Muslim higher education institutions to have the Muslim spin on education.
I wouldn't say the Muslim spin.
The good spin, not the bad spin.
Yeah, I would say have the Muslim stamp.
Okay. Well, the Muslim stamp. So we have a community. It's got a masjid. It's got schooling in it, Muslim schooling. What else does that community need, or should it be working towards?
That community needs credible, qualified scholars. That's the foundation. As Franz Rosenthal, the renowned Orientalist, he wrote a book called Knowledge Triumphant. And in that book, he argues and makes a very strong case that Islam is the first and possibly the only knowledge-based civilization in human history. Civilizations were based on race, ethnicity, geography. So the Nilotic civilizations are based on the Nile River Valley. So you have Kush, Nubia, and Egypt, ancient Egypt. They're all rooted in the Nile River Valley. Those civilizations never manifested themselves in another geographical region. And so Muslim civilization is knowledge-based. And because it's knowledge-based, it manifests itself in unique iterations amongst the Arabs, amongst the Turkic people, amongst the Europeans in Andalusia and Bosnia and other places in Europe. It manifests itself amongst the Central Asians. It manifests itself amongst the Malays. It manifests itself in North, West, and East Africa. So the Swahili civilizations in East Africa, the North African Berber Islamic episodes, the West African, Ghana, Songhay, Mali. And so we have to have scholarship. The enslaved population in this country, there were conservative estimate 20% of the slaves were Muslims. We know one of their stories, roots, Kunta Kinte, from this Muslim from West Africa brought here and then beaten out of his name and beaten out of his Islam. We know his story through Alex Haley, one of his descendants. When Alex Haley, his search for his roots ended in Jufaray Island off the coast of Gambia in a Muslim village. We know the story of Ayyub bin Sulaiman. Ayyub bin Sulaiman, Job bin Solomon, the fortunate slave. His biography is the oldest extant work of African-American literature. We know the story of Abdurrahman, Ibrahim Abdurrahman, Natchez, Mississippi, prince amongst slaves. We know the story of Umar bin Said. So Muslims were here. It's been documented. But because there were no communities, because there were no learning institutions, Islam, as soon as the importation of Muslim slaves stopped with the abolition of slavery, then the Islamic presence disappeared amongst the African American people. And so knowledge is absolutely critical for the survival and perpetuation, for the prospering and perpetuation of Muslim communities. So we need credible scholars to guide and provide spiritual leadership. At the end of the day, we're a spiritual community. We're not a purely political community. Politics is part of our religion, but the core of our existence is we are a spiritual community. Therefore, we need spiritual leadership and guidance. And so scholars are absolutely essential, and we have to make sure our scholars are receiving compensation and salaries that allow them to be scholars.
Yeah.
And they're not driving taxis on the side and driving Uber on the side to be able to take care of their families. So that's what we need, absolutely. And therefore we need seminaries. In addition to colleges and university, we need seminaries that are training scholars and training scholars from a young age. So they memorize Quran. They memorized a lot of our literary heritage. They're very conversant in our poetry. They have a firm grasp on our jurisprudence. And so they've been nurtured. So if you take an example of Azhar, they have the Azhar Ibtida'iyya wa I'dadiyya wa Thanawiyya wal Kulliyya. And so we have the equivalent of that. We the children that show inclination and promise and are very oriented towards the religion, then we help to train them from elementary school, middle school, high school, university, college level. And so this is absolutely essential for the continued prosperity and the perpetuation of our community.
So we need Muslim scholars in every community. Where did you say we get them? We get them from the seminaries that we found?
We have to establish our seminaries and training schools and madaris. Absolutely. No one else is going to do it.
Okay, so you're not a fan of sending them overseas like you did when you studied in Syria?
Well, we need our own because, that was a phase in the development of the community. And that was the only option we have. But that is not a sustainable model, even based on the politics. Some of us studied in Syria. Syria's gone.
Yeah.
Can't do that anymore. Some of us studied in Yemen with the Habaib. Yemen's gone. Can't do that anymore. Some of us studied in Egypt. Egypt, alhamdulillah, but it's shaky. If you can draw a lot of suspicion being a foreign student of religion, and in Egypt right now. And so the options they shrink and shrink, and that's on the one hand. On the other hand, we have now generations here. This is their land, this is their culture, this is their language. And so we need scholars who are not only conversant in the religion, but also conversant in the cultural currents and the intellectual currents that are shaping our society, so that our religious scholars can address issues of relevance in the language and at a level that's required for their voice to be meaningful and to contribute to the overall discourse surrounding religious, social, cultural events here in this country.
Right. Okay. So
I'll give you an example. How many really high-level scholars come from overseas? I mean, PhDs and then studied 20, 30 years with the highest mashayikh in their land. And we have them here.
Yeah. It's a handful.
And they're, let's say even if there were more than a handful, they're absolutely irrelevant in terms of affecting popular, social, cultural, political, religious discourse here in this country. Irrelevant.
Yeah, for sure.
So we need people that attain a high level here, but also are studying and growing and understanding with the generation they're going to be serving.
And I think this is the urf component that you're referring to, that they need to know the customs.
Absolutely. Al-adatu muhakkama. So
what does that mean?
Custom, convention, urf has legal consideration, legal weight. And so they know, like, this is acceptable urf. So we shouldn't be beating our young people up because, they're dressed like you're dressed, or just modestly, a little looser, so the biceps aren't as
I'm
visible.
sorry.
Now you're still trying to get that wife. So it's like,
it's
sister, which way?
you know what it is? Well, it's the layers that make it look tighter.
I know, alhamdulillah.
Because I'm in New Haven.
Yeah, I'm just kidding you. But you know, there's nothing. We should have Western dress, but it conforms to our Islamic standards of modesty. So you don't necessarily, and probably shouldn't. It would be inappropriate for you to be running around in your daily life in a jalabiya or in a thobe or a shawwal khamis or some other, or Kurdish baggy pants with a big wide waist wrapper.
But if I do wear that, do I get barakah, Sheikh? Do I get some sort of hasanat?
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Not at all?
Unfortunately.
Even if I wear the kufi and the
turban?
turban?
You might on ceremonial occasions or occasionally for Eid wear the dress of whatever your parents' land is. There's nothing wrong with that. But in terms of what should be the norm for us and what should we find condemnable, we have to be very keen to understanding what's going on.
I hear
in our culture.
Okay, so you
like
need
this. See,
go
this is long, but this is totally Western. You know,
yeah, you're wearing a
Western
suit
collar.
today.
It's a suit, but look how long it is. It's very modest. Inshallah.
Yeah,
It's
this is
not
an overcoat.
form-fitting.
Yeah.
It's a thin coat. It's not an overcoat.
Okay.
A Chinese collar. That's Chinese, you know. So we're blending the cultures. But in a way, if I walk down the street, someone might say, "Man, where could I get one of those?"
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I hear you.
Okay.
MashaAllah. So you're saying that we need homegrown scholars.
Absolutely.
So that they understand.
Not every land. Like we have different people. We have Turks. You go to Turkey. Who are the imams in the masjid? Turks.
Right.
Who are giving the fatwa? Turkish muftis. Not Arab muftis.
Right.
You know, you go to Egypt. Who are the imams? Egyptian. Who are giving the fatwa? Egyptian muftis. Not even Saudi Arabian muftis. Egyptian muftis.
Yep.
You go to Tunisia. You don't have Algerian. You have Tunisian imams. You go to Morocco. You have Moroccan imams. You go to Senegal. You have Senegalese imams and Senegalese muftis and Senegalese shuyukh. You go to Mali, they're local. So Senegal, there might be Mandinka. Or Gambia, Mandinka. You go to Mali, the Bambara. So you go to Nigeria, the Hausa, Fulani.
Yeah, what are these words?
And you go to Senegal, Wolof. These are tribes. Wolof and Mandinka in Senegal. And some Fulani in eastern, southern parts of Senegal. Fulani, Mandinka, Wolof. You go to Nigeria, Hausa, Fulani, and Yoruba. It's my friend Ibrahim OCF, Yoruba Muslim. And so you find not only the national realities, but tribal realities reflected in who's leading the people. You go to Kurdistan, the Kurd is the Iraqi Kurd, Syrian Kurd, Turkish Kurd. The imams are Kurdish. You know, that's the reality. Iran, Iraq, you have different countries. Iran, Kurdistan, Iraq, Kurdistan. And it was divided up like that for a reason, to weaken it. Iraq, Kurdistan, Iran, Kurdistan, Syrian, Kurdistan, Turkey, Kurdistan. All of them, the imams, the shuyukh are Kurdish.
MashaAllah.
You go to Iran, they're Iranian. They speak Persian and Farsi. You go to Afghanistan, they're Tajik, Uzbek, and Pashtun. And in each of those areas, you don't find the Tajik imam in the land of the Pashtun. You don't find the Pashtun imam in the land of the Uzbeks. They reflect their local cultural and tribal realities.
And in America, we have all that.
In America, we have all that, but the overriding cultural consideration of the Muslims, especially the younger Muslims, and now most older Muslims, because now you're working on a third generation. Your parents came here. Where did they come from?
From Syria.
From Syria.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Tunisia.
Tayyip. So how long have they been here? Just ballpark.
Since the 80s.
Okay. So they're here long enough to be truly called Americans. They've been here over 3 decades.
Yeah.
Now you're 100% American.
Right.
You have Tunisian, Syrian roots, which you should acknowledge and hold on to. But in terms of your cultural influences, probably you prefer pizza over many Syrian dishes.
Yeah.
And so you don't
not
eat
pizza, but something like a burger, maybe.
Yeah, a burger.
Yeah.
Something
a steak, something like that.
Totally American over couscous.
Well, couscous is pretty good, actually.
It is good, but if you were just on the fly, you have no discomfort with the burger.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Couscous is the treat.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were in Tunisia, couscous would be the norm and the burger would be the treat.
Yeah, exactly.
And they got this burger shop down there, so let's go try that.
Yeah.
So you're American. You probably would prefer to watch American football or basketball as opposed to soccer.
I don't know. I kind of like soccer.
Soccer's growing here. Yeah. That's not a good analogy.
No,
but you get my point.
No, I get
and
what
now
you're saying.
your children. So your parents are here long enough to be called American. They still might have Syrian, Tunisian accent, but they're totally comfortable here. This is their home now.
Wait, are we talking about who are we talking about?
Your parents.
Oh yeah.
Your Tunisian, Syrian parents.
Yep.
You're here now. There's no question. Now you're at an age where now you can start a family.
Mm-hmm.
So your children are now 3-generation American. They should have imams that reflect who they are.
We got him, Imam Zaid.
May Allah give us tawfiq and taysir and beyond me.
Yeah.
Because I'm at the end of the line. I'm gonna learn how to play golf. So no, I'm not. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But they need someone who can talk to them in their language, but also someone that's very conversant in the religion. So they're not being told things that are not compatible with Islam as it will be recognized throughout the world. Right. And this goes back to your first question, like what do we expect or anticipate, desire, want to see an American Muslim? First of all, I want to see Islam that's recognizable to Muslims anywhere on the face of the earth. We don't say there's an American Islam. There's an American flavor. The imams dress a certain way. Their knowledge of certain cultural, intellectual currents is different than an imam in Malaysia or somewhere. There's overlap because there's a global culture, a monoculture, but there are regional, tribal distinctions. And so I don't want to see an Islam where things that the Ummah would say is haram, American Muslims say are halal.
I think that's happening already, right?
Well, that's what I don't want to see, and I think that is very dangerous.
Well, if we could pick apart an example, some people may consider it absolutely haram that a woman wear a color other than black.
No, that's not from our religion, and that's not a practice That's not a practice of even Muslims in every Muslim country. You go from Muslim lands, you find different colors. You go to Western Sahara, for example. Women wear these very colorful sort of one-piece wraps. In Mauritania also. You go to Algeria. Historically, women will wear white niqab and a white ibaya. There's no hadith that says women have to wear black. That's a custom in Saudi Arabia. And so that's total misguidance for anyone to say this is Islam. And this is what I mean. But I'll tell you what is haram for Muslims to be advocating. It's one thing, we're in a pluralistic society. People have a right to believe what they want to believe, do what they want to do, but it's not fitting for Muslims be advocating for haram. So as Muslims, we recognize the right of LGBTQI plus people to do what they want to do. Neighbors, co-workers, do what you want to do. But that doesn't mean I'm waving the rainbow flag and advocating for that.
Well, what if
and just as I wouldn't, people have a right to drink alcohol. It's haram. So we say, yani, sodomy is haram. A lot of Muslims would not say that now because they don't want to offend anyone.
Well, what if they're sponsoring a rally for refugee rights, and it's something that we support too? Can we be there?
We can. We're there for refugee rights. What if they say there's a quid pro quo? We supported your refugee right parade rally. Now we want you to come to support us and rights of trans people and LGBTQ people. Do you go? They were at your rally.
But don't we support the rights of all people to live freely?
As we recognize the right of all people. We support the right of people to choose, but we don't actively advocate. And I'll give you, this is what I say to a lot of people who raise that question. All right, why aren't you advocating for alcoholics? They're troubled souls. They're good people. Well, unfortunately, they've fallen into alcohol addiction. Why aren't you out advocating for them? Why don't you leave your support for Alcoholics and Narcotics Anonymous to get them sober? But we say certain sexual acts are sinful, but we advocate for people's right to engage in those sins. So why only that sin? And why only in the last 20 years or so? Why as a community weren't we doing this before? What has changed? Our religion? And so this is a very sensitive topic. So but what I'm saying, people can do what they want to do. And it's not our place to harm people, but to openly, actively advocate for what we know is haram. That's something that is recognizably not part of our religion. من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. A person's religion being good is to leave what doesn't concern them. What a person does is not their business. It's not my business. One way or the other. So we're in a pluralistic society. People can do what they want to do. I'm not going to stop them. When it comes to advocating, when it comes to supporting policies that are harmful. So a lot of our girls are being hurt now because transgender women can compete with biological girls in sports. We just had the case of the swimmer in Pennsylvania, and the leader of the head of the swimming association resigns. Says not fair, because this is a guy who identifies as a girl, but physiologically has advantages over female swimmers. And is breaking all the records here in the state of Connecticut.
That's crazy.
3 girls. Well, that's the law. That's Title IX.
Yeah.
And Muslims are advocating for that. Some of our Muslims in Congress are advocating for that.
So about that, Muslims in politics, is that?
So I'm not saying what I'm saying. People can do what they want, but it's not our place to advocate for it. I'm totally against that.
But if we step outside of that,
I'm against bathroom bills.
I hear you, but if we step outside of that for a second,
I'm against the right of biological men with male appendages to go in female bathrooms just because they identify as women. I think that's insane. In many places, that's the law. Girls have been raped. Men have been sent into women's prison. You had a famous case in Britain, and the guy starts raping the women.
Oh my God!
It's like he died and went to Jannah. Not Jannah. He died and went to paradise. They leave it more general.
So just a question.
Just because he identified as a woman, and you have Muslims defending that.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, people can do what they want to do, but it's not our place to defend things that have been recognized historically by our religion to be haram.
I gotcha. So if we just take a step back for a second and we go back to the goal of a Muslim, he's in his community, he established higher education institutions. Is the next step politics? Is that where he should go? Or do you...
We should have people that we groom to go into politics. Grooming meaning we identify a talent and a desire, charisma at a young age is something they're really attracted to. We help to finance their education. We help to put them through law school. That's the number one breeding ground for politicians in our country. We support their campaigns, but we also give them a solid Islamic, Muslim education so they know their religion. And when they go into those spaces, they know where to draw the line. They know where the limits lie. And they know what kind of coalitions to build profitably.
I hear you. So what would the goal of a Muslim in American politics be? Some right-wing conspiracy theorists say that Muslims in politics have one goal in mind, and that's to implement Sharia law in the country.
Well, that's a nice talking point. But if 2 or 3 Muslims in a Congress that has upward to 500 members can implement Sharia in America, in this political climate at this time, more power to them. They know that's absolutely just a political talking point to scare people into supporting their nefarious anti-Muslim hateful agenda. And so that's not even something to consider. Muslims go into politics to represent their constituents. And there's no Muslim, with the possible exception of not even Ilhan Omar in Minneapolis, who has a huge Somali community. But I'm sure the number of some non-Somali constituents are greater. There's no, other than her, where it might be close to being a significant Muslim minority, there is no Muslim in Congress whose constituency comes close to being a Muslim majority. They're small minorities. And so those Muslims are there to serve all of their constituents. And if their goal was Sharia, people aren't stupid. They would never have gained public office. They would never have succeeded in gaining public office. And so a Muslim going into politics should be mindful of the positive things they can do for their Muslim constituents, just as they're mindful of the positive things they can do for all of their constituents. And so their Muslim constituency, if they can help within the framework of our legal and political system to secure benefits from them, that's their job. And their job is also to do everything in their power to secure advantage and benefits in a positive way for their non-Muslim constituents. That's their job. And so that's what a Muslim in politics should be doing.
So you mentioned a framework. Sorry, you got to go?
We said an hour.
We're not even at an hour. We're still 53 minutes in.
Oh, okay. So let's keep going.
Okay. So just 10 more minutes and we can close, inshallah. When you say framework, do we have a political framework when Muslims are in office?
I think that we don't, to our detriment.
Okay.
In other words, and when I say a framework, I'm not talking about a Shari'i-based framework. I'm talking about just a framework where we've systematically assessed what, in terms of our Muslim constituents, what are the things within the framework of our legal, social, cultural, political system we should be working towards and we should be advocating for.
But politics is compromise. If
well,
I have to...
I thought I said within the framework of our social, cultural, religious, and political systems.
So not the Islamic one.
I thought I said going in initially, not in a Shari'i-based sense.
Okay.
Are you listening to me?
No, I hear you. I apologize.
Or do you have thoughts in your mind?
No, go ahead.
So I said within that framework, and we haven't thought about it. Sometimes it becomes just, alhamdulillah, the community is a lot more sophisticated, but in the past, We have to get out and vote. When? In the presidential elections. In terms of the daily lives of Muslims and others in this country, that's probably the most inconsequential election. Right now, we have a Democratic president. What does that do to advance the Democratic agenda? It would be far better to have a clear Democratic majority in Congress than to have a Democratic president in terms of advancing the interest of the Democratic Party. In any case, Allahumma salli rasulillah. Okay, in the past, we have to vote. There's no thought, vote how? Strategically. Should most of us be voting locally or just waiting for every 4 years for the presidential election and vote? And so we have to vote. It's our civic duty. So everyone runs out to vote. Half of the people vote for the Democrat, half vote for the Republican at any level. Municipal, state, federal. We could have just stayed home. Because this half canceled out that half.
Right.
So everyone voted. They did their civic duty with no thought, no plan, no agenda. And as a result, bam, they just neutralized each other. So we have to have strategies. And this goes back to when I mentioned think tanks. We have to have sophisticated institutions that are studying our situation as Muslims, studying our situation as a country, studying the various forces at work, the movements that are coming into play, and then on the basis of that analysis, determining what are the policy positions we should be advancing and advocating for. And they might not be positions we as Muslims put forth. They might be put forth by Christian groups, by Jewish groups, but they are supportive of those things we have identified as priorities for our community. And so we have to begin to approach the whole issue of politics a lot more strategically, and a lot more strategically, meaning to begin to look ahead and to plan ahead, and not just make decisions based on contemporary realities.
So the art of compromise in politics is well within the parameters of Islam.
Absolutely. But
so
those compromises are governed by Islam, or we're Muslims. We're a religious community. So
I can advocate, for example, if I'm running on the Democratic ticket, for the legalization of weed, if it means I can bring a Muslim into Congress.
No, it doesn't necessarily. You could advocate maybe on other grounds for the legalization of weed, but not legalization for bringing another Muslim in Congress. You might say, I advocate for the legalization of weed because 300,000 Mexicans have died over the course of the last 2 decades to determine who's going to sell weed in America. And so to prevent preserving life has a priority over preserving intellect. And so to save those lives and to stop those drug-fueled wars, I'm advocating for the legalization of marijuana. But to say I'm advocating on the legalization of marijuana with no other consideration just because that's going to allow me to bring a Muslim into Congress, no, we can't think like that. We have to think at a higher level, and we have to think of the greater good, and the greater good not just for Muslims, for everybody.
Okay, can we stretch that a bit and say the LGBTQ rights, advocating for those while getting something else in return that benefits our community?
That would be a quid pro quo. I would say that's an unacceptable quid pro quo. We advocate for the right of everyone to freely practice what they believe in. That benefits me. If that provides benefit for the LGBTQI plus community, so be it. But I'm advocating for the right of everyone to freely believe and practice what they want. I'm advocating for the firm implementation of the First Amendment. Why? Because that protects my rights to live, practice, and propagate my religion. And if that also protects the rights of others, then so be it.
Got
But
it.
to specifically advocate for something that I believe to be not only wrong but harmful for some political advancement, then I'm just selling my soul for some worldly gain.
I hear you. Jazakallah khair. We're at the top of the hour here, so we can go ahead and close. Do you have any closing remarks you want to end with, or?
Yeah, I'll just say, some things we discuss might be controversial. We're not trying to offend anyone or create any controversies, but just trying to attain clarity on some of the things that are vexing and troubling many people in our community and in our country. And I think if we can be honest with each other and open with each other, then we have a much stronger position to talk with each other. But if we're not honest and open, then we're always guessing. And because we're guessing, then we can be really, really offensive. But when everything's clear and and hopefully balanced and not extreme, then there's room. That's where you create the space rather for real politics and genuine compromises to happen.
Got it. Jazakallah khair. We'll go ahead and close with that then. Imam Zaid, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming.
Barakallahu feek. Allah taqabbal mink.
This was a fun one, wallah. Inshallah, whenever you're ready for the next one, just let me know.
Okay.
I can't wait for it, wallah.
3 hours. So 1
Jazakallah
down
khair.
and 2 to go.
I appreciate it.
Inshallah.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I know